My greetings to everyone. I am Professor Dr. Namita Rajput, Professor in Department of Commerce, Aurobindo College, University of Delhi. We have started with the series of Finance for Everyone and we are on with the risk management part. So, with the flow of the lecture is like this today, the emerging trends and technologies in the risk management, followed by the importance of adaptability and flexibility in risk management. Adaptability and flexibility are very crucial in the risk management and definitely identifying the risk. Different types of risk assessment techniques, the risk assessment methods, the risk tolerance, the risk appetite and the different kind of risk. So let us start with the future of the risk. So these are the emerging trends and the technologies in the risk management. The manner that organizations handle risk mitigation and assessment is evolving as a result of a number of new trends and technology in the risk management. And these trends and technologies include, number one, artificial intelligence. In short, we call it as AI. Artificial intelligence is gaining popularity in the risk management due to its ability to find patterns and abnormalities in the huge data sets, which makes it even simpler to spot the possible risk and the hazards. The second is your blockchain. The ability to generate a safe and unchangeable record of the transactions makes the blockchain technology valuable for reducing the risk of fraud, cyber attacks and the data breaches. The third is your cloud computing. By enabling the business to store the data and the applications on the distant servers, cloud computing lowers the risk of the data loss as a result of the hacker's attack or the natural catastrophes. Next is your Internet of Things, we call it as IoT. IoT gadgets may be used to track and manage the risk in the real time, giving the organizations insightful information about the possible risk and enabling them to take preventive action to lessen them. Next we have is a big data analytics. By analyzing the vast volumes of the data from the several sources such as a social media, financial records and the consumer feedback, big data analytics may assist the organizations in identifying the possible dangers. Next is your cyber security. With more frequent and sophisticated cyber attacks, cybersecurity is a very crucial component of the risk management. The cyber dangers may be defended against with the use of the technologies like encryption, multi-factor authentication and intrusion detection systems. Next we have is a risk assessment tools. A number of risk assessment tools are available that may assist the organization in determining their level of risk, exposure and creating the efficient risk management plans. So overall, these cutting edges trends and the technologies, they are assisting the organizations in improved risk management and the threat protection, allowing them to function more safely and productively in a complex and uncertain business environment. Now let us talk about the importance of adaptability and the flexibility in the risk management. The capacity to adapt and to be flexible are the essential for good risk management. The risk can appear suddenly and unpredictably in the modern corporate environment, fast-paced and dynamic environment. Flexible and adaptive business are better prepared to address these risks and lessen their potential effects. Adaptability and flexibility are very crucial in the risk management in the following ways. The number one is reacting to the new hazards. The organizations that are adaptable and agile are better equipped to react to the new emerging dangers. They can immediately recognize and evaluate these risks and then create and put into practice the efficient risk management plans. The second is your modifying the risk management strategies. The organizations that are adaptable and flexible may modify their risk management methods as necessary. And this is crucial since some hazards could call for a different strategy or amount of attention than the others. The third is your managing and shifting the business conditions. The organizations that are agile and flexible may update their risk management methods as necessary. The business conditions can change quickly, and a modified strategy to risk management may be necessary, for instance, in response to changes in the market conditions or a legal requirement. Next is your increasing resilience. The flexibility and adaptability may take organizations more risk resistant, and they can reduce the effect of the risk and recover more rapidly from any negative events by having the ability to swiftly react to changing conditions and change their risk management strategy. Now, overall, the flexibility and adaptability are very crucial elements of the successful risk management. The business are better prepared when they can promptly recognize and address the emerging risk, modify their risk management plans as necessary, and handle the shifting market circumstances. So the first is identifying and assessing the risk. The risk management includes identifying and evaluating the risk as a key component, and here are some of the things to think about. That is, the first is identify the risk. The first step is to identify any risk that might have an influence on your projects, company, or organization. The risk analysis, the brainstorming meetings, and the historical data analysis can be used to accomplish this. The second is your examine the risk. After you have discovered the hazards, examine them to ascertain their propensity to occurring and the possible consequences. The risk matrix, the probability, and the effect analysis and other risk analysis methods can be used to do this. The third is to prioritize the risk. Rank the hazards in the order of likelihood and the potential impact. So this will enable you to manage the resources more wisely and concentrate on the biggest dangers. The next is create a risk management strategies. We have to create the plans for dealing with each risk, and this would involve the risk acceptance, the risk transfer, the risk mitigation, or the risk avoidance. Next is putting the risk management plans into action. After developing your risk management strategies, put them into action and assess their success. So this can entail creating a backup plan and frequently analyzing and revising your risk management strategies. Next is constantly examine and evaluate your risk management plans to make sure that they are still effective and pertinent. And this could entail performing the root risk assessment, updating their risk registries, and modifying the risk management techniques as necessary. Next is we have a clearly convey hazards. Make sure that all the stakeholders are probably informed about the risk. This entails deciding who needs to be informed about each risk, how it will be shared, and when it will be shared. Next is to educate the staff members. Ensure that the staff members are educated on the risk management techniques. So this will guarantee that risk management is incorporated into the daily operations and assist them understand their role and responsibilities in managing risk. Now we are going to discuss the different types of risk identification techniques. To detect the potential risk, there is a variety of risk identification techniques can be applied. So here are few of them in the most typical form. The first is your SWOT analysis. We call it as SWOT analysis. It's a very useful framework for assessing the risk and the possibilities in the SWOT, that is the strength, weaknesses, possibilities and the threats. Analyzing the internal and the external elements that could affect your project or organizations entails doing so. The second is your brainstorming. Brainstorming is a strategy used in the groups to generate the ideas and identify the potential dangers. Either an organized or unstructured approach can be used. The third is your risk mapping, a visual technique for identifying the potential risk and their effects on a project or organization. Risk mapping entails the mapping out the hazards, finding the connections between the various dangers and their effect on the various sectors. It can be very useful. The fourth most important technique is a checklist analysis. The checklist analysis is the process of identifying hazards that may be pertinent to your project or organization by using a predefined checklist of the probable dangers. Next is we have a Delphi method. The Delphi method entails anonymously requesting opinions from a group of experts. This can be very useful for obtaining the consensus on a potential risk or for detecting the risk that might not be immediately obvious. Next is we have a scenario analysis. Creating the scenarios for the events or the circumstances that could affect your project or organization is the task of scenario analysis. This can help in assisting in identifying the potential risk and creating a backup plan. Next is we have the identification of the fundamental sources of the risk. It is done through a root cause analysis, and this can aid in formulating the plans for addressing the underlying causes and the averting dangers. The eighth point is about the failure modes and effect analysis, that is FMEA. The FMEA is a structured methodology for locating and evaluating the probable problems in a system or a process. So it can be applied to recognize the possible risk and create the plans for reducing them. So now we discuss the risk assessment methods, which can be quantitative as well as qualitative. The two primary kind of risk assessment techniques are quantitative as well as qualitative. The methods for quantitative risk assessment method, the first is your Monte Carlo simulations. This probabilistic modeling technique estimates the likelihood of the various outcomes using the random sampling and the statistical analysis. It can be used to calculate the probability and effect of the various risks. The second is your fault tree analysis, and the abbreviated form of the fault tree analysis is FTA. The FTA is a structured method for determining why a system or a process has failed. It also entails determining the potential failure mechanisms and examining the pathways that result in failure. Next is we have the event tree analysis, that is the abbreviated form of event tree analysis is ETA. The ETA is a methodological method for examining the effect of a certain situation or an event. It entails figuring out the potential outcomes and examining the route that could lead to each one. The fourth is your probabilistic risk assessment, that is PRA. PRA is a thorough method for evaluating the hazards related to intricate processes or the systems. The quantifying the likelihood and effects of the various risks is involved. The method for qualitative risk assessment. When you talk about the qualitative risk assessment, we are going to talk about few techniques. The first is a risk matrix. A risk matrix is a straightforward tool that aids in ranking the hazards according to their significance and the likelihood. It entails the rating each risk according to its likelihood and impact. The second method is your risk registers. A risk register is a document that enumerates every risk that could be present for a project or the organization. It can be applied to create a risk management plan and prioritize the issues. Next we have is the expert judgment. To detect the potential hazards and evaluate their possibility and the impact, the expert judgment entails getting the opinions of the subject matter experts. Next is we have a Delphi technique. The Delphi technique method entails the anonymous requesting opinions from a group of specialists, and it can be used to recognize the prospective hazards and come to an agreement on the possibility and impact of these risks. Although sometimes simpler and quicker than quantitative risk assessment approaches, qualitative risk assessment techniques may be less accurate. They work best in the circumstances where the hazards are manageable and they are well known. Although more complicated and time-consuming quantitative risk assessment techniques offer a more precise and in-depth evaluation of the threats. They work best in the circumstances when the hazards are very complicated and they are very unclear. Now we are going to talk about a very important topic, that is, what is the risk tolerance and risk appetite. In the field of the risk management, risk appetite and the risk tolerance are two related but different concepts. Out of this, the first is the risk tolerance. The amount of risk that a person or an organization is willing to accept or endure is referred to as risk tolerance. It refers to the level of risk or potential loss that a person or an organization is prepared to accept in order to achieve their goals or objectives. The risk aversion, the financial stability, and the kind of risk being taken all have an impact on the risk tolerance. For example, someone has a high tolerance for the risk, could be ready to invest in high risk, high reward assets like stocks or cryptocurrencies. A person with a low risk tolerance, on the other hand, could feel more at ease with the low risk investments like bonds or the saving accounts. Now, you will tell me what risk appetite is all about. The level of the risk that a person or an organization is willing to accept in order to achieve their goals or objectives is referred to as a risk appetite, and it is a degree of the risk that a person or a company is willing to actively seek out or pursue. The strategic objectives of the organization, the competitive climate, and the financial situation all have a deep impact on the risk appetite. For instance, a new firm trying to disrupt a market may have a high risk tolerance and may be willing to accept the large risk in order to achieve its objectives. A mature business with a strong market position, on the other hand, can have a lower risk tolerance and be more concerned with preserving its current position. In conclusion, the risk appetite refers to the amount of the risk a person or an organization is willing to actively seek or pursue, whereas risk tolerance refers to the level of the risk that a person or an organization is willing to take. Now coming on to the differentiation between the risk tolerance and the risk appetite. Since you know the concept now, so it will be very easy to differentiate between the two important terms. So in the field of the risk management, risk appetite and the risk tolerance are two related but the different concepts. The willingness of an individual or an organization to accept a particular degree of the risk is referred to as a risk tolerance. It serves as a gauge for how much risk a person or an organization can take on without suffering unnecessarily. And typically, the factors including the financial resources, investing objectives, and the overall risk management strategy, they dictate the risk tolerance. Then contrarily, the risk appetite describes a person or an organization's readiness to accept the risk in a service of a particular aim or the objectives. It serves as a gauge of how much the risk a person or an organization is prepared to accept in order to attain a specific goal. Investment goals, the time horizon, and the risk management procedures, they are the common determinants of the risk appetite. The key distinction between the risk appetite and the risk tolerance is that whereas the risk appetite is more concerned with an individual or the organization desire to accept the risk, the risk tolerance is more concerned with an individual or organization's ability to resist the risk. So risk appetite, on the other hand, is more concerned with the level of the risk that an individual or an organization is prepared to tolerate in order to achieve a certain goal or a certain aim. The risk tolerance is more concerned with the level of risk that an individual or organization is comfortable with. So now, in conclusion, we can say the risk appetite measures a person or organization's desire to accept the risk in order to achieve a certain goal or an aim, whereas the risk tolerance measures a person or organization capacity to resist the risk. So this was all about the overall part of the different strategies of the risk mitigation strategies, what is the concept of risk avoidance, reduction, the hedging and diversification as the risk mitigation tools, and etc. So we have talked about the various mitigation strategies like risk avoidance, the risk reduction, the risk transfer, the risk acceptance, the contingency planning, that is a planning to create a strategy to react to the lessen the effects of a certain should it be materialized, etc., and about the business continuity planning. So this was a very, very important part of the risk management strategies and the risk avoidance. So it is now very tactical and a very important strategy of the business organizations as a whole that we have to make an action plan of how to avoid risk, because risk avoidance is a very important part which eliminates the risk for an ongoing activity, and it helps in sustaining the business and gives a boost to the business to a largest possible extent. Whereas the efforts are also done by the businessmen of today, and they are being tactical about it to reduce the risk also. So it is all about mitigating of the risk, reducing of the risk, avoiding of the risk, and being tactical about making the different policies which are catering to all these important issues, so that the business is not suffering and there are no redundant systems in place and there are no failures which is because of the risk lowering or likelihood or avoidance of risk, etc. Because when you talk about an important relationship between the risk and return, they go hand in hand. So we have to strategize this and talk about the dangers. We have to talk about the hedging. We have to talk about the mitigation tools like hedging, diversification, etc. so that we are able to have the best possible risk pooling, risk transferring, risk assessments and the peace of mind. Thank you so much.